Hi, I'm Aoife from Wicklow Willow, and I'm here today to show you how to make your heart for your giant shamrock. Okay, so the giant shamrock that you're going to make for St. Patrick's Day is made of three separate shapes, three hearts. Okay, so we're going to make the first of those three hearts now. Okay, so I have my materials here ready to go. I have the materials that I foraged for it already. I have the goat willow, which is here, and some hazel as well. I have a little bit of willow that I have growing myself here that I harvested from up the back. I have some ivy and I have some dogwood. Okay, I have some cable ties that we'll need for this as well, because the cable ties are used to help you form the shape. Okay, they come off later on if you want, but you'll need cable ties, or you can use some gardening wire or string. It's up to you. Okay, but you need something to help you keep the shape, or the template, to create the template while you weave it and keep it in place. Okay, you'll need some snips as well. They're really important, and remember to get somebody to help you with the snips because they're very, very sharp. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to show you how to clean off the branches. Okay, so we need to select the branches that we're going to use for the frame of the heart. Okay, so we need strong, long branches for the frame of the heart. So we're going to start with that. Okay, so you can see here I've got my goat willow ready to go, and it's got some two nice branches on it there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two here. The butt end of it down here is a little bit thick, so we're not going to use that. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this one off here. Got a nice long length there, and the other one here. Okay, now I can put that thicker bit to one side. Once I've got my two lengths selected, I'm going to clean it all the way up. Okay, so we don't need these little branches for the frame. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to cut those right down there where they meet the bigger part of the branch. Okay, so give them a little bit of a cut. So you see the way I'm kind of maximising the length of the willow that you harvested from your foraging. Okay, so you've got a nice long piece of willow there, which is perfect to make the frame of your heart. Okay, so that's my first one. And take these little ones out of the way for the minute. Okay, might even use those later on, so you can put those to one side. You might be able to work those back into your heart later on. Okay, so the second one here. Okay, so I'm going to have a little look at those. I'd like them evenly matched, okay, or as evenly matched as possible. Okay, this one's a little bit on the slender side, so I'm going to leave that maybe over here for to help me weave the heart later on. So the smaller stuff can be used as the weaving material that goes in and out through the main frame of the heart, and then the bigger stuff is what we're going to use for the frame. Okay, so I have another one here which is a similar size, I think, to the one that I have already cut out. That one there, yeah, I think that one's okay. It's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. And again, I'm going to clean it off. Okay, so I'm going to give this one a little bit of a trim, and I'm going to follow the main length of the branch. Okay, so that's kind of from the end to the tip. So again, I have a nice long length. Okay, now, okay, so I have two branches there which are ready to go, and what I'm going to do is this part down here is still a little bit too thick for what we need, so I'm going to put the tips together like this, and I'm going to just take a little bit off the end like that. Okay, so I've got rid of the thickest elements which we don't really need. Okay, so now I have two fairly evenly matched branches. Okay, now the first thing you want to do with this is to make your heart is just to get the thicker parts and just to eye it out first. You don't need to put your cable ties on yet, but what you want to do is just kind of cross the two ends over. You have maybe about 5 centimeters left there on either end. And what I'm doing there is I'm going to hold it with my hand. I'm going to hold it up to show you that's going to form the bottom part of our heart. Okay, so you've got that kind of nice kind of V shape for the bottom of your heart. And in a minute I'll show you how these are going to curve in, and they're going to form that nice rounded sides to the two sides of your heart. Okay, so before we curve those over and make that nice rounded shape, I'm going to place this down on the table. I'm going to get a cable tie. Cable ties are really, really handy for this kind of thing because they're really fast to use, and they make a really tight grip on the willow, which is really, really good. Okay, and it's really hard to do this with just holding it in your hand. So to make things a little bit easier, I'll show you how to make it with the cable ties. Traditionally this would have been done maybe with a willow tie instead of cable ties, but for this project we're going to use this cable tie. So I'm going to put it in. Two are crossed over each other like that, and I've got the cable tie around both of them all the way around, and then I'm going to make it as tight as I can. Okay, keeping that nice V shape like that, and then you might want to get someone to hold it with you while you tighten it up. Okay, Now, to make sure it's really, really tight, I'm going to get a second cable tie, okay? So this one is going all the way around the two branches like that. I've got a nice little bit of a thick part here on the end. We can cut those off later, but that's just to kind of give us a little bit of room to work with, okay? Now, and we can tidy it all up later on. The next cable tie I'm going to put in like this, in the middle of the V, okay? And I'm going to go around the other side of the branches like that. Can you see that? And it goes all the way around, and again I'm going to put it through and I'm going to get it nice and tight. So what that does is I'm going to place it down for a minute and I'm going to tighten that up, okay? So what that has done now is it just makes the whole thing, it doesn't jiggle around too much, so it just lets you form your shape a little bit better, okay? So give them both a little tighten. Now what you can do if you want, because these cable tie ends are going to be in the way, so you just want to give them, make sure they're really tight first and then give them a little snip like that. So you have it nice and tight and tied well, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do, okay? Now, put those over there. Next thing you need to do is form the shape of your heart, okay? So you can see you've got your nice V shape, it's nice and sturdy, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bend these parts in, okay, to make the heart shape. So the first one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it against my stomach like this, because it's you kind of need both your hands. So you need to get the first, we'll do one at a time. So I'm going to start with this side over here. And I'm going to gently bend it until it has a nice curve, okay? Then what I'm going to do is, holding it with my thumb like that, I'm going to get a smaller cable tie. And I'm going to put that around. So I've got this thinner branch with this nice curve coming down here, and it's just crossing over this outside of the frame on the opposite side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie that in with another cable tie. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but if you have someone around to help you, that'd be really, really useful, okay? So like that, nice and tight again. So now I can let go, and I've got the first side of my heart, okay? Now, the second side, again, up against your stomach like that. You don't have to worry about this one because it's nice and secure, and you're going to curve in the other side of your heart, okay? So really gently. This material is great, it's really, really flexible, but you still want to be careful with it because it can snap. If it snaps, don't worry about it, just get another branch and put it in instead. But you can see the way I've got this nice curve here like this. So you've got two sides of the heart, okay? And again, I'm holding it here with my thumb, okay, on the opposite side. So this one is coming over from here and it's crossing over this outside part on this main frame, and I'm going to cable tie in that position too, okay? And what that does is frees you up to start putting in your smaller materials to make and fill out the heart, okay? Now, nice and tight. Okay, so we have the start of our shape, okay? Now, it's kind of interesting, you have these nice kinks and kind of knots and stuff in the wood, and even where you've cut off with your secateurs, it gives it like a nice interesting kind of texture and patterns and stuff, which I think really, really helps in the whole creative element of this project. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to hold it where I kind of just have a little look at what you're doing. I'm going to kind of maybe play with it a little bit to see where I'm going to create or where it makes the best heart shape. So I think if I were to move it down where these two pieces of willow are crossing over here, I think if I'm to hold that up, it makes quite a nice heart shape, okay? And it'll make a really nice element to your giant shamrock, okay? So holding that with my fingers again, my thumb and my forefinger here, nice and tight, I'm going to get another cable tie, okay? And I'm going to put that in around the two branches that are crossing over there. And what that does is it helps you keep your shape of your heart, okay? So it's really important because working with materials like willow and hazel and dogwood and ivy and stuff like that, it's constantly moving. It's not a fixed material, so when you're weaving with it, it's always moving. So to have the cable ties or the gardening wire, whichever you want, to keep your shape like that is really important because it maintains that shape throughout the weaving process, okay? So we have the start of the heart ready to go. The next part of this now is to start weaving. So we're going to get our smaller materials ready and we're going to start to weave that in and out. Okay, so we'll do that now in a minute. Now for the next step, we're going to start putting some extra materials in here, the smaller weaving branches and pieces of willow that we have here. We're going to start filling this out. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give these table ties a little bit of a cut first. Okay, so just to get them out of the way. Later on, if you want, you can take them off or you can leave them in. It just depends maybe on how strong the frame is, but for the minute we don't need those little bits in our way. Okay, now the whole idea of this weaving is that we utilize all the little pieces that we have, so we don't really want to throw anything out or get rid of anything. It's kind of just embrace all the little nooks and crannies of every branch and all the crookedness and everything that there is there, because it's great. The colours, the textures and everything, it's really going to look really fantastic when it's finished. Okay, so you can see here I've got these two little ends coming out. Okay, so these thicker ones later on we can cut off, but the small stuff we want to make use of, okay, because that's the really flexible, you know, weaving material that can look really interesting when we start crossing it around. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back inside the frame. So the inside the frame is this heart all the way around. So this outside shape is what we're looking at here. Okay, so that's the outside of our shape. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use that frame and we're going to use these internal kind of branches that we've kind of cable tied in place here to help us support the materials that we're going to put in next. Okay, so I'm going to start that off. Okay, so this smaller one here, I'm just going to simply place it back inside. There's no real rule to this, it's just whatever works. Okay, so what I've done is I've just left that nice curve on, and then I've placed the branch underneath this branch here, and it just stops it moving around. And later on, if I come back to that again, there might be a smaller hole maybe where I can fit it in and maybe make it a little bit tighter, but for the moment it's perfect just there. Going to do on the same on the other side. Okay, going to bring it back inside the frame. Okay, so if I just curve it back in like that, and then I place it maybe in underneath that one again and up like that, we've started off our weaving process. Okay, so we've got two nice pieces there. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to start putting in a little bit of extra stuff. So what I've done is I've cut some of the smaller branches off the larger goat willow branches that we foraged for. Okay, so we have this nice kind of straight bit here. So we've got, I mean, this is quite short, but we're not making a really big shape here. Remember that we're making 3 separate hearts, so we can put the smaller materials into each individual component, and then later on we're going to bring it all together. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this one here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe try and wrap a little bit around the outside of the frame, just to maybe give it a little bit of extra strength. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to hold this branch here with my fingers against it like that, and then I'm going to bring it back inside the frame. Okay, and I'm going to bring it around again. It's like as if you're twisting a piece of string around the branch. So you see the way I've twisted that in around like that. Okay, so what that does is that thicker part is braced up against the frame. You have the thinner part nice and flexible coming around here, and I've just left it kind of hanging out like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back in. It's all about bringing it back inside the frame. Okay, so if I cross that over, have a look before I make any decisions. So kind of you're having a look at what is the best thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back inside the frame. Often when you're weaving with willow, the best result is to kind of try and make it tight. Okay, the way to make it tight is to try and bring it, if it's over an element over on this side, so it's coming over the frame, to bring it under the next element that it meets can work really well. Okay, so I'm going to bring it under this branch here, and you can see that it's kind of traveling across these 2 branches here, and I think that would look quite well. So what I'm going to do is I'm then going to, as I said, it's over this one here, I'm going to bring it under this one. So it might be a good idea to bring it over that one, and what that'll do is it'll make it a little bit more rigid. The more materials you put inside into your heart, you build into it, the more rigid your heart is going to become. Okay, so you see the way it's kind of, this branch has now stayed in this position, so it's over, under, over. It's a really good approach to take when using materials like this to weave it. Okay, so the next one, I have this little one. I don't think there's any need to get rid of this. Sometimes people might like to cut this off, but I think it'll work quite well if I just leave it across like that. So it's coming across the frame. Again, what I might do is I might use that little bit at the end and I'll curve it around the outside of the frame. So you're just tying it into place. Do it a few times and I'll leave it like that. So you see the way it's starting to build up on that side. Okay, now this bit here, you see, so it's kind of, you put in one branch, but you try and work as much as you can with that one branch and maximize that branch. Okay, so use every bit of it. It's all those little tips, those thick bits, when they all come together, it's what makes the overall shape come together well, but also makes it really, really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to bring it across across this side of the frame. And I don't think, actually, you know, it's not going to work for me, but if I just leave it sit there for the minute, I'll come back to it, okay? So I'm going to go for another one of those branches. So I've got a few nice ones here, a nice little small one. Going to throw that one in, I think. So same as I did here, I wrapped it around and I brought it across. I think that approach works quite well, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing again. What I'm going to do, place it here like that against my stomach. It gives it a place for you to hold and to brace it. I'm going to hold the branch like that with my hand, and then I'm going to bring the thicker end. So the thin end is up here, the thick end is down here. I'm going to bring it around inside that frame and then bring it around again, okay? Like that. You see the way it's holding in place, okay? So you see the flexibility of the materials you're working with. It's absolutely incredible. It's like a rope almost, goes all the way around the outside of that frame. We have this bit sticking out, but that's okay. When we're finished our heart and we have our shape made and we have everything in place, we're going to go and we can trim it off. We don't want to trim it off right now because we haven't enough materials in the shape yet to keep it in place, okay? So that's an important thing to remember as well. Now, this branch is traveling over here, but I think it might work quite well if I bend it back inside this side of the frame. So we have a little bit more material building up on this side, but maybe we should fill out this side a little bit. So you're constantly looking at your shape and you're constantly kind of making decisions, saying, okay, what would be the best thing to do? So I'm going to hold my thumb, so bring the branch across outside of that frame. I'm just going to give it a really nice wrap around. See the way it really curves around? Gave it a bit of support with my thumb there, and I'm going to wrap it around like that, okay? Now, and it's just nice and steady there, okay? So you can see the way it builds up, okay? Now, I'm going to put another one in. So I'm going to go ahead, put a little bit in, and you'll see how it builds up, okay? Now you can see here that I've built up quite a bit of the willow into the shape, okay? The outside edges have become quite undefined, but later on when we clear it all up and we give it a little bit of a tidy here and there, you'll see that shape come back. But we have this main heart shape is still there, okay? So as I showed you, we wrapped branches and I kept on adding them in, okay? So I'm going to just go through it one more time and then we'll put a little bit of extra material in, okay? So if you have a look at your shape as you go along, just keep on eyeing up where there's maybe bigger spaces with less material. So this here has got a bigger gap over here than here. I think there's quite a nice amount of material filled on this side, but maybe we could do with one more over here. And then when we get our other materials and we put it in, it's really going to fill out that shape, okay? So I'm going to take again, working with the thick end, it's always really good to work with the thick end first because you can kind of place that in and you can get that tension I was talking about. So you see, if I put this in like this here, the thick end first, and then keeping in mind it's under this one, I have it over this one, so that kind of creates tension. I'm going to bring it under some more elements up here. It doesn't always have to go under one or over one or anything like that. It can go whatever way it wants. It's really just trying to find a place for it so that it's nice and sturdy, okay? So what I've done here is I've just brought it in and I'm going to bring it around on a slight curve. And when I bring it around, so I'm kind of bringing it from this side over to this side, curving it around, and I'm going to find a little gap to place that in. So giving it a little bit of support with my hands here, I'm going to curve that in like that. And what that does is it has this nice kind of curved shape in. So we have nice interesting shapes taking place within the frame of the heart, okay? And that's what it's all about. It's like finding like you know, the gap, giving it a nice little bit of structure, making it more rigid by putting the willow in, and then using the tips and, you know, kind of the finer details and creating interesting shapes. All of this, when you put it together, when the giant shamrock comes together and you've got it all put together, each individual component is unique in its own way, and then you put the three of them together and it becomes this larger art piece. It's a really, really nice way to build something up, okay? So I've got my willow in. I'm going to put in a little bit of extra materials here, and then we're going to give it a little bit of a tidy, okay? Now, I've got some greener willow here, okay? So this is a slightly greener colour. So if you have got something that you can find near in your garden that has this nice kind of green, it would be really nice for St. Patrick's Day because it really kind of adds to the colour that we're looking for, okay? But if you don't worry about it. It's the shape that's really, really important, okay? So I'm going to take one of these thin bits here. It's a nice length, okay? But keep an eye out. It's often if you live close to often a kind of a marsh or a kind of a boggy area, other types of willow can often grow. So if you, or even maybe, I don't know, maybe in the park you might see some willow. just have a look around. You don't need that much, just maybe 10 pieces that we can add a little bit of colour in with, okay? So again, the same approach as before. I'm going to get this thick end of it and I'm going to start to bring it in, okay? So I'm going to bring it inside the frame like this, and I'm going to pull it through, kind of trying to find a path for it, okay? So you see that nice colour difference, and I'm bringing it over some of the elements and under some of the elements like this, and then I'm just going to kind of curve it around, going to see where I'm going to go next with the thick end, and then I'm going to place it maybe in like that. And what that does is it kind of creates this lovely curve, but it also makes it kind of solid or more rigid. And the more material you put into this shape or any structure like this, the stronger it will come, okay? Now I'm going to go back to the rest of this part, okay? So I have this nice tip, okay? And it's coming out, and that would look really well back inside the shape as well. So I'm going to curve that around the outside of the frame, and I'm going to bring the tip in. It's like sewing, if you're sewing clothes or sewing anything like that. It's kind of, you're going in and out, it's like as if you're going in and out with a needle and thread, okay? So you go with the tip in and out, and you kind of say, as you work through your materials, and as you eye up your shape as you go along, you decide where you're going to put that and where the colour would look nice, what gaps you'd like to break up even further. It's a little bit like, I think sometimes when I look at it, it looks a little bit like stained glass. It's like you have all these like separate panels inside the shape, okay? So it's coming together. So you see this nice green kind of coming through. So I'm going to keep on going now. Got one on that side, going to bring another one in on this side. So I'm going to same approach. I'm going to bring the thick end in, and I'm going to bring it under some of the elements, so it goes under this one and this one here, and it's going to go over that one, and I'm going to bring it back in another gap here and find a nice curve again, okay? So it's whatever way you think it looks best. So I'm going to curve it in like that, okay? Now I've got a nice curve on it there, okay? And again, once I've got that in place and it's nice and steady, I'm going to go back to this nice tip that's coming out here, and I'm going to bring it back inside the frame. So I'm bringing it back in like that, and I'm going to just start sewing it back in again, okay? So I've got it coming back in. Now I've just noticed that this bit here needs to be tightened up a bit. So if there's any bits that kind of bulge out on you, just give them a little bit of a twist back in. Or what you can do sometimes is you can use the other materials to tighten them back in. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there again. So it's kind of in and out, and in and out, and in and out, and you keep on going like that. So all of the materials that you're working with are just kind of coming in and out. It's called a random weave, okay? So there's no rules or rhyme to it whatsoever. It's just random, but whatever way it works, okay? That's the really nice element to this weaving, is that you just do it whatever way it works for you, okay? Now I'm going to put a bit more in. So we'll put in some more willow across here. I'm going to maybe bring it down around the outside of the heart of the heart shape, so that we have the kind of a nice outline in this green. So it's kind of using the colour that we have. So I've got that one. I kind of brought it around the outside, and it's just kind of helped define the outside shape, okay? And again, back to the tip and bring it in and out, okay? So I'm going to do that again on the other side. So I'm going to help define that outside shape using the colour, okay? Now later on in the Giant Shamrock workshop, we're going to have a look at maybe upcycling materials. So if you want to supplement some of these materials with, maybe wool that you have around the house, or a cut up t-shirt, something like that, something like to really kind of bring out those St. Patrick's Day kind of festive colours, then I think that's a good idea too. But the emphasis would be on upcycling and using materials that you have in your home, okay? So we don't need to buy any materials for this. The idea of this project is that everything that we have, we forage for, and then we then use what we have in our house. So we have a good rummage around and we find something that's suitable, and we use it for our project, okay? So I brought this one all the way around the frame. Again, I need to go back to the tip, get that back in. There's no point in leaving that sitting up there. And I'm going to bring it back in like that, okay? And I can still kind of go again with that. So it's as much as it goes. If anything snaps, this material this time of year is quite good because it hasn't started to grow properly again yet. We've got a few little buds on it here and there, but it means that the sap is still quite the water and content isn't high, so it means that it's still easy enough to work with. Sometimes it can break easily. If it breaks, don't worry about it, just put in another piece and just keep on going, because later on you can trim it off and it'll look perfect anyway. Okay, so I'm going to put in another little bit. Okay, so I think I'm going to get a little bit more willow in here, the green stuff, and then I'm going to try and put in a little bit of the ivy, and I think I'll put in a little bit of the dogwood as well. Okay, so you just have to have a good look when you're putting it in as to how it follows or what path it takes. Okay, so I'll put in one more on the opposite side, and then we'll put in a little bit of extra materials in. So again, bringing the thick end through and finding a nice gap for it, remembering to find or to follow that in or over and under, I should say, and that over and under is really what helps this whole thing bind together. Okay, and then I go back, so I've got my thick part in, come back to look at my tip, and then back in with the tip. All right, so just goes on like that. Okay, so you keep on adding in and adding in. Okay, so I mean, you can put in as much material as you want to this. I'm going to just leave it at that for the moment, and I'm going to now put in a little bit of extra material. But if you feel that you want to keep on working away and just like really filling that up there, that's really good too. Okay, now I've added some ivy into this. Okay, so since we had a look at it last, there was a little bit less kind of material in it, but I got some of the nice lengths of ivy that I foraged, and I twisted it all the way around the outside of the frame of the heart, okay, to help define that, so you can see the nice leaves and stuff coming out there. And then after that, I got just a few pieces of the dogwood. That's that vibrant kind of red that you see here, kind of woven throughout it. Okay, so what that then is kind of just a little swirl here and there, just to kind of try and find the curve as you go in and out through your work. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to trim it off, and then for the next workshop you're going to see how to assemble the 3 hearts, to put them together and to add a stem. Okay, and then also we're going to put a little bit of decoration with it then as well. Okay, but first we're going to give it a little bit of trim. So to trim it off, what we want to do is we want to help outline this nice heart shape. Okay, because ultimately that's what's going to form the full shape of the shamrock, or the 3 distinct hearts. Okay, so we need to make that kind of distinct. Okay, so using your snips, you don't want to cut too close to anything. So you see the way this one here is sticking out, you want to leave it lie on top of whatever it's lying and give it a little bit of room and give it a nice cut. So you kind of, I've left it sitting up on top of that outside frame. It's not going to slip anywhere, and I've given it a nice cut. So I'm going to go around and I'm just going to trim off these outside ones all the way around, just to keep that heart shape. Okay, so anything, I'm going to leave the leaves because I think that they look really nice. So I'm going to leave those sticking out there, and I'm going to just trim the little bits and pieces. This is a big chunky bit down the end. I'm going to give that a chop. This one here, there's a kind of one that's sticking out. Again, it's resting with something behind it, so you need it to leave it rest against whatever element is behind it, and then just give it a little bit of space, maybe a centimetre past that, and give it a chop. Same one here as well. Okay, so I'm just going to leave those ones there. Now, earlier on we talked about these pieces here that stuck out. Okay, so they're not needed anymore. They were just part of, they were kind of helping us along to create the outside frame. So we can give these a little bit of a cut. Now I'm going to leave about a centimetre between this cable tie and the cut. So I'm going to leave about 1 centimetre and give a nice straight cut like that, just to trim it down slightly. Okay, and I'm going to do the same on this side here. Okay, now I'm going to continue to trim. So I'm going to take all the pieces, remembering to let them lie up against the outside frame. So if they are resting against the frame, you need to just cut on the outside of that so that they don't get cut too short and fall back in. Okay, and because they won't have any strength if you do that. Now I'm going to leave these leaves on. I think they look good, and I'm just going to define the shape a little bit better by clipping off these outside pieces of branches that are sticking out. Okay, now this one here, I can either feed it back in, which I think I will do. I'm going to this is a piece of ivy that I wrapped around the frame. It's become loose, so I'm just going to tighten it up there and put it back in through the frame there. Now there's probably a little bit more that I can do with that there, and pull it through. Now, and then this end of it here that's just been left kind of sticking up, I'm going to give it a little bit of a clip. Okay, so I continue to move around the outside of my frame. This bit here needs a little bit of a cut, again leaving it up against the frame, and then this large piece coming up, we don't need that there anymore, and this small bit and this small bit here. and this last bit, oh, this bit actually, and this last bit here. Okay, so we have the heart shape finished. So we have this nice outside shape defined, and we have the first element of our shamrock made. Okay, so you need another 2 of these made. Okay, so you need to have enough materials to make the 3 of them. So you need to go now, make 3 altogether, and for the next workshop I'll show you how to assemble it, how to stick them together, and how to create that giant shamrock. Okay, and when we're doing that, then we'll have a nice stem coming out, so I'll show you how to do that in the next workshop as well. And we're going to decorate. If you choose to decorate, you can, but I'll go through that with you anyway. We'll do a little bit of decoration, upcycling, and using materials that we have around the house. We might even incorporate some fairy lights into that for the night time, which I think would look good too. Okay, so I'll see you then.